The Godson, a religious sci-fi mystery audio story, written and produced by Oneil Wright, read by AV, all rights reserved. Part 1. Grounded. Start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old they will not turn from it. Proverbs 22 verse 6. Discipline your children, and they will give you peace. They will bring you the delights you desire. Proverbs 29 verse 17. Chapter 1. A New Toy. Jamai Can gripped the greasy handle on the door of the antiquated fridge as his 11-year-old eyes roamed the rancid kitchen. Then his face brightened. There was a matchbox on the top of the broken microwave on the dusty porcelain counter. He scratched his head, remembering when, on a rainy day in the summer of last year, 2036, he and his mom were in the same kitchen, and she scolded him for picking up a stove lighter and then told him his godfather promised to bring brand new toys for him. That day hasn't arrived yet, but his last deceased grandma used to say, "God always provides." And he believed it. He released the fridge door and ambled over to the long side of the counter, glancing around searchingly and saw no one. And oddly, his thirst was quenched, and his belly remained quiet and flat. And except for the fridge humming, his bare feet shifting on the tile floor and the window curtains dancing gracefully, the house was quiet and warm. His sister was in her room, doing whatever 12-year-old girls do. His mom was somewhere around the house, or maybe not around at all. His dad was yet to be seen since a rich-looking man in a black Prado came in June of last year and took him away. But Jamai was free to not worry about grown-ups' whereabouts. So he didn't. He leaned forward against the counter, stretched up on the tip of his toes, and snatched the small, flat rectangular box. He shook it, heard its contents inside, and a smile curved his dry lips. And he turned on his heels and strode back into the dining room to play with the box of matchsticks, which to him was now the league of tiny fireheads. His new toy. Chapter 2. Burning Urge. Jamai stooped, his eyes fastened on the small box of treasure in his hand. He pulled out the tray slowly and methodically, noticing that the sticks retained their heads. He picked one and observed its tiny red sulfuric tip closely. He then tasted it and grimaced. It was saltish. So he quickly wiped his tongue on the stretched-out neck of his white t-shirt and then scraped his tongue with his teeth and spat on the floor. Nothing heavy, just an ordinary shower to any ant crawling by. He scattered the matchsticks on the floor and counted them to the sum of 14. He then began arranging them into images. First an elephant, then a dog, and so on and so forth. His knees burning, he sat on the cool floor cross-legged. He shuffled on his bony bottom, and then Crab walked closer to the nearest wall. And like he would do with a crayon, he began marking it with the sulfur, while singing a jingle from a TV commercial. He admired his abstract artwork for a brief moment. Then he dropped the used stick and picked up another. And he froze, vaguely aware of the matchstick pinched tightly between his right thumb and index finger like a lollipop. He was now staring curiously into the kitchen, narrowing his eyes on a small brown thing resting motionless on the white floor. It seemed to be a piece of brown paper. No, it looked more like a dry leaf. By now, his eyes were already beaming, and his mouth had shot open. He was too overwhelmed with joy to continue scribbling on the wall. And that joy was a burning urge to see the leaf on fire. Chapter 3. Insect Intruder. Jamai rose quickly and strutted back to the doorless archway of the kitchen. Leaning in, he discovered that what he thought was a brown leaf was actually an insect. Then, making a slow, slight, calculated motion forward and staring keenly, he realized the insect was a cockroach. He thought back to integrated science class earlier today, that his classmates were right to have mocked the Bible story about the creation of the world, and that some creatures are just too ugly, pesky, and scrawny to ever have been created by a good God. He watched the roach scurry away diagonally along the white tiles, then up along the blue wall, and across the white ceiling, then down the other side wall, and onto the countertop. It froze near a long edge of the counter. Then its antennas bowed and waved slowly, beckoning, as if challenging him to a spontaneous sprint through the rear doorway to the outside. He tiptoed silently, evenly, his heart palpitating, his breathing light. Closer, much closer. He cupped his hands over it. Its many fine legs wiggled and pedaled manically in his palms, feeling tickly and, in an odd way, prickly like needles. The insect smelled awful too. He held it in his left hand and tried to clip it between his right thumb and index finger, but it fell onto the counter on its back, its legs still pedaling and kicking manically. They didn't quite look soft, but wiry with those needle-like tips. The insect was squeezed, but not squashed. Only a tiny mold of smelly pus was excreted from its belly, and it appeared that something tiny and shiny was beneath the cream. "Yuck," he said with a grimace and batted the roach to the floor aggressively. Then he bent at the waist staring at it. There was still nothing of significant interest about this roach, except, maybe, for that tiny part of that shiny thing that looked like a watch battery. It looked quite weird. Maybe the bad roach had a well-deserved tumor, or a deformity of sorts. Or it was pregnant. Whatever. It was common to see roaches inside the house, either dead or dying. Most times, he would ignore them, till his mom or dad made them disappear. Rarely did he see a healthy one. But this one was a brazen daylight intruder. And so, detecting no hindrance, Jamai nodded at his clever plan and felt his cracked lips form into a satisfied grin. It truly deserved whatever next was coming to it. Chapter 4. The Unimagined Enemy. Jamai straightened up and picked a fork and a spoon from the messy kitchen sink. He glanced back just in time to see the roach finally flick to its legs. He turned quickly and spawned it firmly, as it was about to scurry away. Then he forced it into the matchbox tray, restraining his victim with his left thumb, and receiving a few mild needle-like pricks in the process. More pus excreted onto its underbelly. He inserted the tray into the box case. The roach shuffled and pushed and scraped the coffin. It was a small and dark place for any creature not much bigger than his thumb, but a perfect fit for this criminal. Satisfied, he placed a strip of one of the two flint sides of the box case in the right front pocket of his cargo shorts and the matchsticks in the left back pocket. What should he do now? Going outside at this time was not in his plan. He could be mocked by that boy, Stilo Hunter. Stilo hated him, maybe because Jamai was a mixed child of Afro-Jamaican, Indian, and Chinese heritage. But Jamai was proud to be, out of many, one person. Jamai liked Carlton Manslayer, a cousin of one of Jamai's school friends who was currently living 5 houses down the avenue, even less. Carlton labeled him a special child, but in a bad way. So Jamai would never want to be on the same spot of ground with either boy at any time. To make matters worse, last evening, around this time, while his 2 rivals were scooting past his gate, they mocked him for playing with imaginary friends in his own yard. But today, he would be back out there with an unimagined enemy. He took a deep breath and exhaled smoothly. Then he carried the paper casket at arm's length, as if it was a fragile object, out through the back door and gently pulled the door close. Chapter 5. The Fun in Funeral. Jamai's eyes narrowed reflexively as he stepped from the small concrete pavement at the door onto low, spongy grass that carpeted the wide backyard. The sun, which he learnt at school today was estimated to be 93 million miles away and 109 times the diameter of Earth, was peeking through the torn veil of a disheveled cloud and snailing closer to the bruised horizon, casting soft golden light wherever shadows, both soft and sharp, refused to play. He looked eastward, towards the community's only grocery store on his side of the neighborhood, and 2 metal side windows fired blinding sunbeams at his eyes. His mom had told him, sometime last year, that he might need glasses soon, which he doubted she could afford. Still, he was grateful for the mere ability to see a dry evening after school since last February. He halted in the middle of the backyard and placed the box on a dead breadfruit leaf. Then he dug a hole in the ground with the fork and scooped out the dirt with the spoon, making it nearly 2 inches deep, the same, wide, and about 4 long. He swept the backyard and the observable parts of the house with his eyes again and saw no one, not even a cat. So he gently placed the paper coffin horizontally into the rectangular hole. Then he dusted off his hands and straightened up. Same time, a robocar jetted past overhead at low altitude, east to west, and a black Kingston Police Department helicopter followed in hot pursuit, which was a common thing to observe, especially on weekends. He looked around the observable property again, and still saw no one. So he cleared his throat and fixed an invisible necktie, like his mother's favorite preacher, his godfather, the pastor who buried his grandmothers 2 years previously, 3 months apart, would have done. He began to hoop his sermon, with stylish fluctuations, like the old man would too. Brothers and sisters, Mr. Cockroach lived a bad life. He ate the Can's food without their permission. He pooped everywhere in their house. He crawled all over their kitchen counter. He broke into their closets and hid himself in their shoes. He caused the children to develop allergic reactions to insects. He scared their mom so much, she becomes easily angry at her kids. Worst of all, he caused their dad to be so frustrated with hunting him down that the big man left the house. Yes, he left his family. Brothers and sisters. The man left his wife and kids and hasn't returned home yet. If he will ever. And partly because of this, Mr. Cockroach caused the Can's only son, Jamai, to be so angry, Jam had to capture Mr. Cockroach and bury him alive. But may his soul rest in peace and not pieces. He then pinched up a tiny amount of dirt and said, "Dust to dust, ashes to ashes," as he sprinkled it on the coffin, which made a low, clattering sound as though rain was falling on a stretched tarpaulin several yards away. He then closed off the solemn funeral with a reverential amen. Next, he covered the box with more dirt and placed a small stone at one end of the grave to represent a headstone and stood staring down at his handy work, allowing a moment of respectful silence to pass before he sighed heavily. Then he swiftly bent forward, then leaned backwards, and flung the 2 grave-digging tools as hard as he could, to as far as he hoped they would land. Then he froze, barely hearing them fall into a cluster of low bushes just across the northernmost diamond wire boundary fence. All done and all seemingly clear around him, and his clothes still without dirt spots and roach pus, he turned and began sauntering back towards the house, biting his lips to block a smile of satisfaction. After all, he had just saved his home from an invasion of boredom and from a malicious roach. And, imitating his astute godfather once again, he muttered to himself, "Don't worry about it, godson. You've done well. You were just having a good time. And I'm glad you know there's a good reason why the word fun is in the word funeral." Chapter 6. The House. Jamai halted in the backyard, frowning at the house he called home. Crouched on Lot 17, it was the only single-floor home on Rage Avenue. He hated that it was made of weak concrete and rough cedar boards and painted lemon yellow, with its front steps dyed cherry red, and its roof painted smoke gray. He had learnt recently from his 5th-grade teacher, of all persons, that it was in the same condition for 3 generations now. He was also told, sometime early last year, that some residents called it the worst-looking house, with the worst living occupants in eastern Kingston. Yet, as he resumed strolling towards it, he had to admit that it was certainly luring their red eyes away from the other homes. Besides, it was the best his parents had, and maybe it was the only one they could afford, though he imagined it had accommodated some very nasty activities over the years before his parents came. And not just insects and rodents. But which house hasn't? Even new ones do. Wealthy ones, even. And there had been 5 new houses on Rage Avenue since his closest neighbors, the Hunters, moved into theirs last year. It was an old place, all right. But no one and nothing, especially those freaks with more than 2 legs, would ever cause him to be afraid to live here. He would grow up healthy and get rich quick and buy his mom a big house on a hill in one of those high-tech gated communities, far away from this old-fashioned, laid-back area of the nation's capital, and long before he reached his dad's age of 45. He arrived at the back door of the kitchen and halted, just long enough to calm his mood. Then he turned the knob and pushed it open, and to his shock, a humongous roach grabbed his wrist. Chapter 7. Man of the House. Contrary to his initial superstitious thought, it wasn't the ghost of that buried insect, nor one of its revengeful relatives, but a human with a warm, rough palm, for long fingers and a thick thumb that now maintained a strong grip on Jamai's slender hand. Jamai lifted his eyes, and the rest of his face followed, slowly, carefully, nervously, no, fearfully, up to the bearded chin, and the sealed mouth, and to the bulbous nose, and then to the stained eyes of his captor. And Jamai wished he had buried himself with the roach. The tall, dark, neatly trimmed man, around mid-30s, glared down at him, then stepped out from the kitchen doorway, maintaining his grip on Jamai's hand while he pulled the door shut quietly behind them. Then his captor said, "I saw what you did out here to that insect. God created it. God created you. Would you like God or anybody to treat you like you did that roach?" Jamai shuddered. "Ah, no, I'm sorry. Sir, His captor smiled slyly, slightly revealing stained teeth. "No need to be so nervous, boy. It's okay. Trust me. It is." You've been adventurous and manly. And that's normal. It's the way God has set nature. Survival of the fittest, some say. Jamai was growing more puzzled by the seconds. By the way, rude boy, did you see my stuff? Jamai swallowed hard. What stuff, sir? He managed to ask. It doesn't matter what you saw, or where, or when, or who you saw with it or without it. Did you see my stuff? No, sir. Did you touch my stuff? Jamai sniffled. What? No, sir. Good, his captor said, then leaned in closer and lowered his dry voice. Listen. Never ever look at or touch any of my stuff. If you do, then everybody will know that you are Roach Boy. Jamai shuddered. His captor grinned like a fox. Do you want to be called Roach Boy? No, sir. Jamai replied without hesitation. He would never want to be associated with stinky, scrawny roaches or any other insect for that matter. His captor said coyly. So, will you keep this between us? Jamai stuttered. Yes, sir. It's yes, Daddy. His captor, the man, his uncle, Steve Can, corrected him sternly. Yes, Daddy, Jamai mumbled, not meeting the big man's cold eyes. Good boy. Now go inside and watch. No, read something decent. And behave yourself. Your mom and Colleen don't want you pessing them. And I'll be around. You better thank God your godfather still cares about you, 'cause none of the kids around here will ever like you. The man's words stung like 100 wasps. But Jamai felt soothing relief when, finally, his captor released his hand and remained standing, as if he was waiting on Jamai to make his next best move. And Jamai did. Chapter 8. Cruel Mercy. Jamai stepped through the front door into the living room, and the scent of curry, mixed with other seasonings and spices, invaded his nostrils, awakening the worms inside his gut. He closed the door quietly, and as he was treading softly along the passageway towards the bathroom, he looked across the dining room into the kitchen and saw his slender mom standing at the counter, her back turned to him, and her right shoulder and elbow moving up and down rhythmically. She was kneading flour dough, no doubt, and she was speaking into a mobile phone which was wedged between her cheek and left shoulder. She said, "Can you believe I'm making dumplings and I can't find anything to light the stove?" She listened, then said, "No, Maxine. It's not self-light. We couldn't even afford one of those at the time, which was 15 years ago, much more than an AI smart stove now, although that's not allowed in this community. Can you believe it?" She went silent for a couple seconds, then spoke more contemptuously. "No, good girl. Rage Avenue will never ever become modernized beyond the 2020s. Here in that similar place called Simple City, in Manchester, are the first and second heavens on earth. At least, that's what our cult leaders, as the haters call them, try to force into our gullible minds." She went on speaking on the same subject. Jamai was glad his mom was distractedly occupied, and he knew better than to interrupt, so he continued treading quietly past her. That he had been outside long was also evident in the dining room. The wall had been wiped clean of the scribbling, and the used matchstick was missing from the floor. He continued to the bathroom, hurried through the ajar door, and shut it quietly, hoping his mom or sister didn't come knocking. He then leaned back against it, rubbing his right wrist and staring at himself in the crystal-clean mirror. His face was as messed up as his thoughts, for he was feeling bad for causing his mother's current plight, and he hated their sad condition, being that they were obedient residents of Rage Avenue. So he was troubled by her gloomy conversation. He was also, once more, thinking that his dad's only brother was indeed a mysterious man. Why did his uncle force him to call him Dad? And what was that stuff he asked about? He couldn't place his finger on anything at the moment, though there was a short list of questionable things that should have been easily memorable. Then he remembered what it was. And it was just as bad as what Jamai had watched him doing from a safe distance yesterday. His uncle was burying something about the size of a 60-pound pit bull in the ground, over in the bushes, behind the vacant doghouse which was close beyond the vegetable garden. Jamai didn't know what exactly the man buried, but whatever it was, seemed to be dead, going down and under the red dirt. So why did his uncle even pretend to be callous with him? As he pondered on probable answers, he became increasingly overwhelmed by an urge to relish his own deed, which he'd executed earlier. Because at least, unlike his uncle who had buried his victim while it was dead, he, being a kid, had shown mercy to his victim by burying the roach while it was still alive. Yes, he had been merciful to that bad insect. As he began his bathroom business in warm, stuffy, smelly quietness, he could more clearly hear his mom saying, Maxine, my friend, we could talk all evening. But I have to go now and beg Mr. Hunter for a lighter. My boy Jamai is somewhere having fun. I won't bother him." She went silent briefly, then said, "Yes, maybe." She waited again, snickered, then said, "You know, girl, I just can't figure it out. But no, maybe Steve took it." She went silent again. Then she laughed out loud and said, "No, are you crazy? I won't call and bother him. He's not my man. And at this point in my life, I don't care about men, except my absentee husband, of course." She laughed vulgarly. Several seconds later, Jamai cringed as he flushed the noisy toilet. Then he washed his hands thoroughly, and his face sloppily, accidentally creating soapy domes and smudges and blurry streams on the mirror. Then, having only dried himself, and wanting to leave such a splashy mess, he felt a casual sense of guilt and fear crawling up his spine. He also felt his face frowning as an intrusive thought crash-landed in his head. It was a thought that also caused him to shudder. And the thought was a question. And the question escaped his lips in a low, slow flow of warm breath. "Is Mom as merciful as I am?" Then he answered in an optimistic tone, and with a brightened face, nodding slowly. "Yes, Mom is merciful. Mom has always been merciful to me. Mom is a Christian. And Christians don't harm their kids. They don't harm people, period. Godfather Wong would never allow anyone to punish me severely. No way. Which means Mom can't beat me, nor bury me alive like I did that roach either." Feeling relieved, Jamai exited the bathroom discreetly without a second glance at the mirror and the sprinkled floor. Then, making sure the way was clear, he strode up the second half of the main passageway and slid into his unkempt bedroom and shut the door carefully. Like a criminal in hiding. Chapter 9. Scene of the crime. Jamai undressed down to his underwear and dumped his sweaty clothes into a basket which stood like a dwarf before his closet. Then he hurriedly put on a pair of plain black Levi shorts and a yellow t-shirt with the superhero movie title Galaxy Force printed in a stylish dome curve, in green and black bold all-capital letters on the front, and then slipped his feet into a pair of open-toe slippers. Then, checking himself in his mirror, he sighed and shrugged and smiled. All was good. He pulled a small box of Galaxy Force superhero toy figures from under his bed and scattered them on the floor. Then sat beside them and pulled his Samsung tablet from a long edge of the bed. Next, he crossed his legs and leaned back against a wall, the door on his left. He was relaxed and ready to play the final level of a Galaxy Force Solar Genesis 3 game. He vaguely heard his sister's annoying voice, punctuated with laughter and giggles, rising and falling inside her room next door. She was on her phone again, no doubt. He also barely heard the kitchen door close. Maybe their mom had just left to go begging the Hunters for a box of matches or a stove lighter, or she had just returned feeling embarrassed. He turned on the device, feeling at ease. His sister's room door cracked open, and her feet crunched casually past his door and down the passageway, receding, until she stopped at the bathroom door. Or so it seemed, for he listened for her to close it but heard nothing, not even a flush. In an odd way, he wished she had gone in. Even a brother needs an assistant and an alibi in a sister sometimes. 20 minutes later, as he had deducted from the clock on his heated tablet, their mom's voice penetrated his door with a high pitch. "Jamai, Colleen, it's dinner time. Get here now." Colleen answered promptly, maybe from the living room. "Coming, Mom," he shouted. He dropped the tablet on the toys, scattering them, and maybe even cracking the screen protector. Ignoring it, he freshened his armpits with a roll-on deodorant, just before he burst through the door and galloped down the passageway to the dining room. A few minutes later, having not gone to the bathroom to wash his hands, he sat at the table, eyeing Colleen, who sat before him in pink floral PJs and a black silk bonnet covering her braided hair. She was quiet and looking somber, and somewhat disgusted at God knows what. Although, to be fair, she had just finished setting the table all by herself, the result of which included 4 covered glass bowls and a green sweating plastic jug filled with sarsop juice, all of which now teased his appetite. And besides, Mom wasn't moving fast enough with a new pack of table napkins. But he was relatively relaxed, because he knew that soon they would be having this savory, sumptuous dinner, and her face would be brightened, and both of them would be comparing and contrasting their plates, such as who got more meat and who got more dumplings, and so on and so funny. And Mom would be mad, and they would make her smile eventually. As usual, he had once heard his godfather say in a sermon, have fun before your funeral. And Jamai agreed. He licked his lips as he watched their mom wag daintily from the kitchen, but then he blew up his cheeks as she went into the bathroom instead of joining them. Same time, he noticed a sardonic smirk on Colleen's light brown face, and his face flushed. Then he felt himself coil like a sorry pup as he saw their mom emerge from the bathroom, or rather, from the scene of crime, with a scowl plastered all over her face. Then, leaving the bathroom door wide open, she went into her bedroom. By now, his head was dropped, as he got lost in Wonderland, and so he only heard her entering his room further up the passageway. Moments later, he saw her return and stand before the bathroom, and her glare captured his guilty eyes before he could look away. "Get up," she said sternly but calmly, her fists on her curvy hips. His heart raced against his nerves as he slid off the chair and stood looking down at his dirty toes without a single word. And he watched the shadow of her head bobbing on the floor as she said dramatically, "Boy, oh boy, you are in big, big trouble. Boy, you better have a good explanation ASAP. For I'm quite sure that not even our good God on his throne wants you to go to bed tonight unpunished, and certainly not with a full stomach." Chapter 10. Jamai's Fate. He clenched his teeth and kept his lips sealed. "I've had enough of your laziness and nastiness, boy," his mom snapped, and slammed the bathroom door shut with her right heel, then leaned back slightly, glaring at him. "Who exactly are you, Jamai?" He remained standing before her, looking past her into the passageway, sniffling and counting down from number 10 to the moment of her impending first slap. At 4, she flexed her fingers and his voice cracked. "Please, Mom, I will do anything. Mom, please." He was suddenly dragged into the passageway between the bathroom and her bedroom, which was another tight place to be, and shaded, because the living room window did not face the late afternoon sun, and all the interior doors were closed. Her back was now turned to Colleen, who was pretending to mind her own business, while he stood rigid facing their mom, sniffling and sobbing desperately. "So you chose to mess up everything, everywhere, even the kitchen, and left them for your sister to clean? This place even smelled like a wet cockroach when I got in." "Why?" He said nothing, only thinking it was a good thing she didn't see him with the insect earlier. She yelled, "Silence isn't a good choice. You're such a very loud boy whenever you're doing odd things. Now talk, or I might have to pull my—" "Please, Mom. Have mercy," he pleaded, and shot his hands up shielding his head, sniffling again, while staring at her stiffened, raised open hand. She leaned back and half-laughed mockingly. "Okay, so let me get this straight. You're now a negotiator too?" No, he wasn't. Not with her. Not in his wildest dreams. Straightening up, she raised her stinging voice again. "Well, I'm 27 and have been an interrogator from birth. So tell me this, bad son. Why did you empty an entire box of matchsticks? Yes. I saw you. And force that living roach into it and preach over it, and then bury it? Are you a budding pastor now, boy? Let me rephrase that. Are you a budding evil pastor now?" Before he could answer, she added, "You could have been crazier and burnt us all and the house to ashes." His eyes were again fastened to the floor between their feet. "By the way, do you play with your sister anymore?" He opened his mouth, and only a gush of warm breath jumped out of his throat. He looked past her waist to see his sister making funny faces at him. "If I play with Colleen, I will become like her," he said under his breath. His mom rocked back and froze, staring wide-eyed down her nose at him for a moment. "Really now? Who told you such a stupid thing, boy?" He said nothing. "Let me see." She tapped her right cheek with a finger thoughtfully. "Was it Doggy Dawes?" He shook his head. "Talk to me. Was it those manslayer cousins, Davino and Carlton?" "Oh no, Mom, they only talk nice things about us," he half-lied. "They never talked good about his family. They never talked bad about them either. Not to his knowledge. So, was it Sharp-Tongue Sharon? Or was it Tito the class clown?" He hesitated. It was Sonia." "Oh, I knew it." His mom sucked in a deep breath. "What else did Professor Poppy Show's little feisty daughter tell you about your family, boy?" He began to stutter. She said that my dad is a loser, because he is hardly ever home like now." She swallowed hard above him. "Oh, and do you agree with her?" He delayed his reply, then mumbled, "Yes, Mommy." His face remained low, but he could see Colleen, still sitting at the table, trying unsuccessfully to suppress a giggle. He snorted invisible steam, like a bull about to charge at his sister. Their mom lashed out. "That's it. Go to your room now, and do your homework for school on Monday. Then read through that book you see on the bed. You are grounded." Jamai shuddered. His mom had never executed this punishment before. She yanked herself around. "And you, Colleen, get into the bathroom and start cleaning it. Now." Colleen's face flashed terror. "What, Mom?" "He messed it up. He's free. I need to finish my homework too. And I'm hungry." "Mom, I did my homework already," Jamai said a bit brightly, trying to change her decision on his punishment. His belly growled softly again. "Okay then. 2 books for you to read tonight. Cover to cover. Then write me 2 reports on each of them by tomorrow evening, before you iron your uniforms. And no TV or tablet for you tomorrow night either. And I don't want to hear another word from you, Jamai. Now go." He realized he didn't move, for as if held in place by the hands of a strong invisible man, he was frozen, looking at her belly section, and wincing like a sorry pup while she huffed and waited on him to comply. Perhaps he should just quickly tell her the roach deserved to die early, because it already had a deadly disease. He should just apologize about the matches. Or he should just tell her he wanted to clean the bathroom instead, but that he needed energy to do it. Maybe she would reconsider being so mad at him and let him have dinner. Her steel fingers gripped a shoulder section of his shirt, cutting his mental ranting short of saying something more stupid. And she dragged him along the passageway and towards his bedroom. Next, she chucked the door open and pushed him in, followed and bolted the door behind them. She then pointed at a thick hardcover book on the bed as she said, "The next one is coming." Then she snapped the windows shut. He only kept his tongue tamed, though his lips were parted in bewilderment. The room was shaded, yet her eyes were too bright, too piercing, too menacing. And to his skin-crawling horror, she pulled out her leather belt from her pants waist. He coiled in her tightening grip on his upper right arm, bracing for the dreaded feeling of pain. She then began swearing before No, she didn't spank him. Maybe not yet. Still, he imagined a lash accompanying each curse word, and himself falling into a colony of ants, a lake of fire, and a floor made of needles, all at the same time. And even after his skin became like that of a goose, she still didn't whip him. And oddly so. He watched hawkishly as she, still gripping the belt, stormed off, and a slam followed her out through the door. Seconds later, as the violence gave way to a reckoning silence, he released a sour breath of partial relief. But then reality struck him once again, because for the first time in his entire life, he was being grounded, and he was sentenced without even a taste of dinner. Chapter 11. Grounded. Jamai felt something moving on the outer side of his left foot. He quickly raised his head, looking down the length of his legs, but saw nothing of interest, neither on nor near his feet. Nothing alien. Nothing creeping or crawling. Yet, whatever it was must have hurried away in a couple seconds. He defogged his eyes with the balls of his palms, yawning as he became fully awoke. He was lying on the floor beside his bed. Then, smelling the scent of his mom's perfume mixed with kitchen scent hanging around the dim room, he jackknifed to a sitting position. Did she bring dinner for him? He searched the room with his hungry eyes. Nothing appeared. Was it night yet? No, there were lines of dull light in the door frame and soft light in the brown curtains. Once again, he cleared his eyes. And this time he saw a cockroach crawling past his stretched-out bare feet. He watched it stop, turn, and stop again, staring at him suspectedly. The insect was also aiming its needle-like antennas at him, as if Jamai was being held hostage at 2 spare points, and like it was pointing them at the ginormous human it had just discovered. Jamai shook his head, and the insect, maybe the second one to pass him in seconds, scurried away into the shadows of his dress shoes. Jamai had a weird feeling that more than 2 of them were there in the dark spying on him. And maybe they were relatives of the one he buried alive. Who knew? But he wouldn't harm them. Not yet. No. No way. Not again. He turned his head and discovered the other book that his mom had promised to add to his reading punishment stocked squarely on top of the other on the bed. He shook his head, which now ached slightly. He was dehydrated. How would he manage to read anything? He most certainly hated reading physical books. Yet that was only whenever anyone forced him to do so. Perhaps she didn't know that reading books was the greatest activity in the whole wide universe to him. Second only to having a meal, of course. In fact, he loved mystery, adventure, fantasy, and sci-fi novels above all others. So much so, he would borrow a few for an extended period of time from the school library and other times from some of his schoolmates, and he would stay up late most nights reading under the covers with a penlight he had found in his dad's ransacked garage, way into the early morning. Reading these stories gave him creative privileges and fantastical joy. He liked to imagine mystical worlds. He liked placing physical features on the characters. He liked joining them in their complex lives, including helping the good characters destroy evil ones. He liked solving conflicts with them in all the strange ways fictional characters do. Books were indeed the best place to find some of the most glorious worlds, the wickedest villains, and the bravest heroes. And undoubtedly most magical of all was that books were his escape portal out from this miserable world. But his mom might have done the impossible, having dropped them onto his bed, the first one while he was at the dining table, and the other while he was in here napping. She might have expected him to be fast asleep in no time, then wake up having to read these two boring books. And she would be right, because to read books about God and angels wasn't on his list. At least, not right now. Reading these boring books would certainly make him hungrier. Worst, he would have to read them through tonight without a meal. But at least, if he had enough energy reserved, reading would be a distraction from his hunger. Much more, he was sure he was much closer to bedtime than mealtime, and the sun hadn't been eaten completely by a mountain yet. He heard the muffled voices of his mom and sister. They were probably still in the dining room having dinner and laughing at him. He got up and slowly, quietly cracked the door open, and clearly heard his mom say, "Don't be too sorry for him. He's going to stay grounded till he learns to behave himself. He's nothing like—" Her voice trailed off. Colleen remained silent too. He stepped back from the door and picked up the book which was lying on top of the other and scanned its covers. They were beautifully designed and embellished with flying angels embossed around the title. Stories Angels Tell, and the name of the author, Dr. John Wong, as well as the blurb at the back. John Wong was his godfather. Jamai had only seen him on TV and on Viral Tube and wished to meet him in person soon. And so, for a brief moment, as he explored the preliminary pages of the book, he drooled over the man's qualifications which were printed below the man's name. Bachelor of Arts in Religion, Master of Arts in Theology, Doctor of Ministry, Doctor of Philosophy, Doctor of Theology, Justice of the Peace, Order of Distinction. Back to the front cover, he noticed a small golden circle which had sun-ray edges, and the words winner of the 2034 Crime Solvers Award written in black. Jamai nodded thoughtfully. The old man was not only a decorated pastor and a brilliant writer, but he was also a crime solver with his book. Who or what in Jamaica was cooler than his godfather? Jamai might also soon find out what crime he had solved, for Jamai had always hoped to become a crime solver too. He picked up the other book with his other hand. It was a hardcover illustrated children's Bible. Both books might have weighed nearly the same, and they looked just as thick. He tossed them back onto the bed and sighed heavily with his eyes closed. Then he sat on the floor again, trying to avoid seeing the books. But then, mulling over the melancholic nature of his free time, he pulled down the Bible and opened the front cover, then the title page. He read the handwritten cursive words beneath the title Holy Bible. To Jamai, from Godpa John Wong. Jamai smiled. The old man really cared about him. He turned to the table of contents. Next, he flipped the pages and read the short introduction. Then he finally turned to the first book of the Bible titled Genesis. There, he began reading at the first word written beneath a small black and white chapter illustration depicting light piercing darkness. After minutes of reading the first two chapters, punctuated by yawns and sniffles, he pondered on the two textual passages, such as how God made the universe, including all creatures, especially the first man, from dirt and the first woman from one of the man's ribs, that God made humans in his own image and likeness, how God made everything great and small, and they were all good, which meant God must be angry whenever his creation is tampered with or destroyed, even by other creatures. Jamai would be angry too. So, maybe God was angry at him for killing the roach. What might he do to show God he was sorry? Something more than just praying to him? He furrowed his brows, thinking far and wide, long and hard, till fatigue invaded his being again. But he wouldn't go back to sleep. Not yet. He had been trying to ignore the obvious earlier, till he fell victim to a nap on the floor. But now, he was certain that, besides this self-inflicted predicament wherein he had placed that live roach in the ground, and then ended up grounded in his bedroom, and was now somewhat grounded in the Bible of God, something was off in the house. Something eerily strange was lurking in the atmosphere of his home. And, having that floating fleet of terrifying thoughts, Jamai swallowed another stubborn lump of fear, as he leaned back against his bed staring at the windows while the night of uncertainty crawled in. Chapter 12. The Escape Plan. Jamai remained sitting on the floor with his back against his bed. But now he was staring at the door, which he realized he had left slightly ajar. He was too hungry and frustrated to get up and close it so that his mom wouldn't see it breached. Colleen had just passed by to her room next door, and maybe had not even glanced his way. She could slip him some food and water if she wished to do so. But maybe she was afraid of the consequences, and was therefore going with the flow. Nonetheless, he must escape to at least get something to drink. Fast, or ask Colleen. And if he couldn't reach her at his door, then perhaps he could do so by her back window. Better yet, maybe he could escape for good through a window instead of the door, without his mom or Colleen finding out. And most promising of all was that a tree was close to one of his windows, its shadow now looking ghostly against the curtains. Hesitating, he thought back to a Monday evening of last month when, after disembarking a taxi at his gate and entering the house, and immediately receiving a verdict on his day's deeds from his mom, witnessed by his sister, and then entering his bedroom and shedding his uniform, and then putting on evening clothes, he had leaned forward against one of his windowsills, feeling the whispering wind caressing his face with warm fingers. The leaves on the end of a long, slim branch had clawed at his slender hands, and a young breadfruit growing between the leaves was budding his thin chest. He had poked his head out, straining his eyes up into the towering tree, and frowned, finding none of the 5 fruits fit to be picked. So he had pulled his head in, and began patting the baby fruit like it was the head of a pet. Then he had pushed out the small fruit on its springy branch, like it was an unwelcome mongrel dog, and closed the window. He had climbed it halfway the previous day, a Sunday, and used a long stick to pick one fit for roasting. But the fruit, about the size of a football, had fallen onto the zinc roof with a loud bang, and never came down. So that Sunday evening his mom had scolded him harshly before the inquisitive eyes of his sister, just before they ate rice and peas, and fried chicken with vegetables on the side, and downed carrot juice from sweating glasses. Their mom was more than merciful. Plus, it was a stupid adventure. And so he had not climbed the tree since. On that Monday morning at breakfast, his mother had told him, "I'm going to get that tree cut down. You might not see it when you come home from school." He was flabbergasted. "Why, Mom?" "Its roots are damaging the foundation of the house," she had said emphatically. "But Mom, it's a food tree," he had said, annoyed. She had poked his forehead with a stiffened finger. "Be sensible, boy. That tree has destructive roots, the same way you are developing bad roots. And don't give me that look." She was staring at him interrogatively, and her voice had become dry. "Do you want to be homeless?" He had swallowed more of his egg sandwich. "No, Mom." "Good. So before you put on your uniform, break off that branch. Drop it outside and close the window. I don't want it to crack the glass while the tree falls. Worst of all, it would be embarrassing for the cutters to see breadfruit growing inside my house." He had promised to do so, but further defended the tree's right to exist wherever God and nature dictated. And his thoughts had run wild, on the fact that she had a pot of lilies in the living room that bore, basically, nothing, and got too much care and attention from her. It wasn't the breadfruit tree's fault it was growing wayward and climbing through a window. Someone should have pruned it, or bent it while it was young. So if the lilies could stay, and the house should remain, then the tree should too. It was fair game. It had seemed as though she was about to voice her disagreement, but then surrendered to his puppy eyes and fake smile. "Okay, Mr. Budding Environmentalist. I'll reconsider sparing it." She had then chopped the air rapidly with an index finger and added, "But you better be rooted in Jesus with common sense, or you'll be cut down before you can become a man. Understand?" His mouth was full, so he had only nodded, which he had gotten away with. And that was that. Suffice to say, the next day, he had angrily smashed his piggy bank, robbing it of all his savings, and then bought an orange and black football from a vendor at his school gate. Then that same night, as he had stood, leaning on his windowsill, gazing through the branches up into the starry sky, trying to figure out his best lie to defend his decision, his mom stormed into his room, questioned him about the piggy bank, and then scolded him for breaking it, and again for lying to her about not doing it on purpose. That experience was convincing enough for him to stop breaking things, and also lying about doing so. But then his mom had also accused him of standing at his room window spying into the house of their nearest neighbors, the Hunters, through their half-open side windows. She had even told him the tree would soon grow broader and block his nosy view. He had become angry. Yes, he had gotten really mad for being accused of spying on his neighbors. Refusing to wallow any longer in his murky memories, and choosing rather to relish his escape plan, Jamai got up off the floor, and immediately found himself watching his mom through the cracked frame of the door of his semi-dark room, as she stood in front of a man. Jamai was about to conclude on a police officer, or an intruder, when a closer peep revealed the form of his dad's only brother, Steve Can. Both of them were washed bland in the dimness of the passageway, and they were whispering to each other, just a bit too up close and personal for Jamai's liking. Chapter 13. The Sly Spy. His mom and uncle were now looking worried as they remained standing in the passageway. But Jamai was grinning in the confines of his shaded room. For, at least, they were probably feeling the way they and his dad made him feel most times at home. Especially his mom. The house was relatively quiet, so his uncle was whispering louder than she was. Much louder than he might have intended. His uncle said, "Shadow Don is mysterious and downright evil. He will do anything to further his dark agenda in Jamaica, beginning in Rage Avenue and Simple City. No one is able to track him down and bust his cover yet. I wish I could. Man, I so wish I could." Jamai's eyes narrowed in deep thoughts about this person called Shadow Don. His mom whispered her reply. "Your brother shouldn't have gotten involved with the law and order system of liberal Jamaica, or whatever he's trying to be involved with. We warned him. Now he's going to be among them, perhaps for the rest of his life. I hate this country." His uncle retorted grudgingly. "What a dummy. I, too, can't figure out why he wants to be trained to become a servant and protector of a community from a dawn he will never get to know much more defeat. He will never beat the system. Never. Really? So Dad is going to be a servant and a protector?" Jamai almost blurted out his thoughts, had he not covered his mouth with both hands. He then leaned closer to the narrow vertical crack in the door. They wouldn't be able to discover him there. He was that skillful or becoming so. For he had always wanted to be as sly as that fox in the story of the 3 little pigs. His uncle was saying, "I'm telling you, they have bad plans for a lot of kids. The rude ones, especially those who start out killing insects, then chickens, then goats and cows, then eventually humans. You get the picture. And if neither I nor Mike comply, Jamai will become a target too, even at his young age. Plus, apart from the fact you had Colleen at 15 and him at 16, he's nothing but a freak to them. He has already caused harm, minor or not, to a smaller boy at school last month, and I'm sure Shadow Don found out. And I don't want that. Neither do Stilo's parents want that for their boy." Jamai huffed discreetly. Just no way did his uncle just call him a freak. He was no freak, and he would prove it. His mom whispered, "Oh, good God, say what they want about me, but not the kids. No. And Steve, please, don't call these criminals by their stupid aliases. It's ridiculous. Don't be a poppy show like they are." His uncle said, "Well, I am talking about the Don who has eyes on all the young boys here in Rage Avenue. Your son is growing quite strange, and you must admit it. Face it even if you can't pass it. I don't want what could happen to them to ever happen to him, not because of Mike and yourself." His uncle then suppressed a yell with his gritted teeth. "Look, if you don't do as I tell you, Children's Services will take the kids after he's dead. Trust me." "What? Over my dead body?" his mom snapped again. "Exactly," his uncle said. "We can't involve the police in this either. It's too risky for us." Though puzzled about the arguments about kids in danger, Jamai was thinking about nicknames, that they were way cooler than real names sometimes. His dad's nickname was Mike. Just dull, boring Mike. If he could have chosen a nickname for his dad, it would be Far Gone, because he was actually far gone. Now once more remembering the stuff his uncle had confronted him about outside earlier, Jamai frowned at the nickname Firecracker. He'd often thought he heard firecrackers exploding at nighttime, in the area of the street where a man nicknamed Firecracker lived, until he found out that Firecracker was a bad man, cracking gunshots ever so often. Last weekend, a man was shot in the leg by an unknown assailant, and Firecracker was the first to address the issue in public, warning the unidentified cowardly culprit that actions like this were not tolerated in Rage Avenue. The shooter was rumored to still be on the loose. Jamai had seen Firecracker in person twice, 3 times in fact, and even saw Firecracker's weapon, a short black gun, and held it once too. Firecracker was drunk and had carelessly left it on a sofa and went off to bed. Jamai was awestruck by the reality of holding the weapon. It was hard and heavy. Firecracker didn't know he did all that though. And why would he let him find out? After all, Firecracker was no other than his uncle Steve, who was probably a wanted criminal. Jamai's mom was now whispering louder than usual. "Steve, I know you have choices, but Jamai needs you." She sighed, because as you know, his dad isn't here for him. "So will you stay for him? He and Colleen need you." Jamai's uncle seemed thoughtful for a moment. "I know, but if I don't disappear, they'll find me. They'll find our family. I hope they don't know you live here. Although, I don't put anything beyond Shadow Dawn." "What do you mean?" "Good question. I mean, he could be using insects and animals as surveillance, for all I know." "Just saying." "What?" Her face displayed her weirdest thoughts. "I'm talking about cats and dogs, bugs and roaches and more. I call them sly spies." Jamai couldn't believe his own ears. Only his eyes. His mom shook her head. No, you're not making sense. You're talking about biotech experiments and all that spooky scientific stuff." "Yeah, but neither does the new world we live in, girl. You better stay smarter than AI. God made us that way." Jamai pulled his face from the crack in the door frame. First of all, why would his uncle want to disappear? And what exactly was all that talk about spying insects? And AI? He glanced around the room to spot any of the cockroaches and saw none. And before he could ruminate about any spy roach hiding among his things, his mom asked, "So Steve, what are you going to do? Are you going to hide like a—" "No way. I'll go to Manchester and chill for a while. But not yet. I'll go to Tivoli first." His uncle glared into his mom's eyes. "And no one can know about this, not even my brother. If you try to text or call him, or post anything on social media, Shadow Dawn will detect it and find us. And please, don't ever tell the children any of this, especially not Jamai." "Okay." Once more, his mom searched his uncle's eyes, too intimately for Jamai's liking. And she said in a soft, shaky voice, "Why not? I mean, why can't they even know you won't be around for a while longer? What am I to tell the kids? If and when they found out you were here today, then you—" "I have a plan, Sham," his uncle interrupted earnestly. "It's for your own good. My dad used to say to us boys, the truth isn't always the facts." Jamai frowned again. His uncle was still whispering loudly. "So tell the kids I'm on a business trip, just like you did when their dad left. I don't think I can do this." "You'll have to, for their safety and for your safety." Jamai twisted his lips. Some weird Don was out to get all of them. Crazy stuff. And the adults were trying to hide it from him and Colleen underneath a blanket of lies. Madness. Jamai shook his head. His uncle glanced at his wristwatch. "Oh hell, I have to go now." And the man's face collapsed for a brief moment. Just like Jamai's. Because his uncle then kissed his mom on the mouth. A long, noisy kiss. Jamai's eyes widened beyond comfort. And he swallowed hard. Disgusting. What if Dad ever saw this? He wondered angrily, almost breaking his cover. And he blamed himself for seeing the forbidden act. "You better be careful in Tivoli," his frightened mother said a bit breathlessly. "I mean, me and the kids I might just go to Rocky Waters in Portland soon so that they can meet their only living grandparent." "No. Shameen. Look, for God's sake. Take the kids away to Manchester until Mike gets back here. Get them ready as soon as I leave, and get out, or else Mike will have blood on his hands soon. Raise them right, and I'll stay out of trouble. I promise. Mike will have to understand why you had to do this. Trust me." "What?" "No, Steve, no," his mom snapped. "Not Manchester, that more laid-back place." She massaged her forehead. "Boy, oh boy, I'm really glad the kids aren't seeing us like this, Steve. You're a crazy brother-in-law." "Yes, I might be. But John is a big-shot pastor in Simple City and respected by the entire Jamaica. He can help you better than anyone else I know." They went silent for a brief moment, then moved off together in the direction of Jamai's room. Jamai pulled back into deeper shades, still watching. She shook her head as if puzzled. "You are supposed to be an uncle and a protector of your own, not an absentee brother-in-law, nor a maniac." She stopped strolling and looked down somberly. Then they continued towards him. His uncle remained silent as they passed by the room, but he fired a glance at the cracked door. And Jamai froze, his heart drumming loudly. He was busted, for he could swear the man also winked at him. A casual single-eye wink, which was beyond weird and creepy. Jamai recovered just in time to hear his uncle whisper loudly again to his mother. I agree. But it's time to move on with your life, Sham. Mike became your man. When I was just a nobody, then you both were forced to get married. I don't think I can be a superhero for anybody now, not even my own niece and nephew. Jamai's mouth flew open, and his eyes widened as his heart sank. Still, he strained his eyes to see them continue together down the passageway towards his mom's bedroom, now grumbling and muttering over each other. Seconds later, they halted at her half-open door. Then, when his uncle hastened into the living room instead of her bedroom, Jamai breathed a sigh of relief. Steve, hold on. Steve, his mom called. You should at least see the kids. Colleen is in her room, and Jamai is grounded in his room. And don't let me explain without you asking. His uncle was more defiant. Look, Sham, I don't have time. I've got to go. See. Their low voices faded to silence. Then the door in the living room was opened and then slammed shut. Jamai began to wonder and ponder on all he witnessed in the past few minutes. Even before he had finished slowly inching the door closed then shut, and then tiptoed back to the bed. Then he once again found himself seated on the floor next to it. So, he reached up and pulled down the first book he touched on the bed. It was the Bible. He admired its covers meticulously again. Then he opened it and immediately fell in love with the colorful illustrations again. Then he read the table of contents again. And once more, the holy book seemed too interesting to be closed too soon. And yet, he soon got up slowly and sat on the bed, fuming silently. Because just no way were his parents married only because of their kids. And he would find a way to prove it. And just no way did his uncle just neglect them all, just like their dad did, for fear of some stupid shadow dawn. And just no way would he be going to Manchester to be with some old big-shot pastor, author, crime solver, his godfather. Just no way. He would rather stay herein. A thought hit him like lightning from a blue sky. And wide-eyed, he heard himself whisper, "The cockroaches. They are spies of the shadow dawn." Then, having become a slave to his impulse, he began to quickly and thoroughly search the floor, then the closet, then the bed, and even his shoes, and found none of the cockroaches. Then he remembered the one he buried alive, that it had something resembling a watch battery in its belly, and its needle-like legs, and its intricate antennas, and a lump sunk in his stomach. What if his uncle was right about the shadow dawn having insect and animal spies? Then that meant the dawn was watching everyone and everything in the house. In Rage Avenue. In Kingston. In Jamaica. And whether it was so or not, there was just no way Jamai would ever look at or treat insects and other creatures the same way again. Chapter 14. Burning Anger. An hour past sunset, Jamai's hurt became burning anger. His mouth was drier, and his belly was grumbling more adamantly. He had no desire to please anyone. So, he wouldn't have the book reports to present to his mom tomorrow. After all, it was an unfair and unattainable demand she had made. For who cares to write stupid book reports when no one cares about their well-being? As the night matured, however, his anger was partially remedied. But only by the delayed realization he had the strip of a flint side of the matchbox case, as well as the unused matchsticks in the pockets of the pair of shorts he had shed and dumped into the basket of dirty laundry earlier. He got up quickly and fetched them. Then, returning to sit on the bed, a better idea came to him. So he pulled out the flammable content slowly and lifted it slightly to strike. But he froze, contemplating his next consequential move, feeling uncertain and fearful. He punished an insect that tried to destroy the house. He got punished. Should his mom find out he had been eavesdropping on the truth, his punishment would be increased 10 times. What more could he ever do to not be punished? He was broken by the realization he was transferable and disposable. He was simply nothing to his family. And on top of all this, the house was being surveilled by Shadow Dawn via some AI creatures. Jamai was being spied on even now by that criminal. So he would end the Dawn's fun at his misery, once and for all. He struck the match. A tiny flash in the dimness. He struck again. And there was light in the dimness, illuminating his moon-shaped face in a ghastly way, as he now noticed in the mirror. The flame flickered and was almost extinguished by his heavy breathing, Then it brightened and steadied and grew hotter. He finally lowered his hand, holding the matchstick, closer and closer to touch one of the bed sheets beneath him with the flame. Just then, he heard footsteps in the passageway, approaching his room. Not light steps like those of Colleen, and not heavy footsteps like those of his dad, nor of his uncle. He quickly flashed his hand, extinguishing the flame, while wishing his mom wouldn't enter the room neither by will nor force. Then only her voice did, sounding rather disturbed. Colleen, get yourself back inside the bathroom and clean the seat properly. Quick, go. Then, to Jamai's horror, her voice and her strides slowed, as if she detected something wrong, very close by. He threw the smoking matchstick behind the nightstand table and rolled off the bed facing the door. Then the door flew open, and his monster of a mom appeared in the doorway. Her slender silhouette filled the frame, as she towered over him, aiming a stiffened finger at his head, as if her finger was a short gun. He opened his mouth to speak. Just then, he heard Colleen calling her, and he heard quick footsteps in the passageway. His mom sniffed rapidly like a rabbit and sighed and then pushed Colleen out of his room. His sister, who had barged in seconds ago, maybe to calm their mother, now staggered backwards and fell in the passageway. Dumbfounded, he began to breathe heavily, and their mom leaned closer to his face, grinning wickedly. Then she said in a dry voice, "I smell burnt sulfur, little godson of Pastor Wong. It smells like," she sniffed again while glancing around the room, "it smells like a burnt roach. Are you working with the devil too?" Jamai swallowed hard again, wide-eyed and speechless, and he thanked God that the matchstick had been completely extinguished, that its smoke tail was totally vaporized. She stomped closer and closer, like a T-Rex from the Jurassic Park movie. She spoke sinisterly. "I thought I would have gotten here before the devil could, after your uncle abandoned you too, and after I ran him out of my house. For I'm always here, son. I'm always around. For you." Jamai started sobbing, while crab walking away from her to the other side of the bed. She straightened up and followed him, and her eyes were blood-stained when she hissed, "So why do you want to burn us all alive?" Then she screamed, "I am not an insect, Jamai. You are, and that's why I will bury." She paused, and she slammed the door shut in Colleen's face with her right heel. Then, after a couple seconds of huffing and flexing her shoulders and her neck and her wrists, her face gracefully brightened, like the sun emerging from behind a dark cloud, and she spoke softly, "Oh, I'm so sorry, son. I love you, and I only want the best for you." She then fell on her knees before him and wrapped her arms around him. He shuddered in her tight embrace. She had the scent of his uncle. Not too pleasant. Not like his dad's colognes used to smell on her. She went on, whispering in his ear, "It's my fault, having you grounded for so long in here. It must be driving you crazy." She cupped his cheeks and stuck a warm kiss on his forehead. "Come on, son." She got up, capturing his right hand in an anxious grip. "Let me feel your pockets, my boy." He was annoyed and puzzled, but he complied, like a suspect before a police officer. After she frisked him and found him clean, she rubbed his head. Jamai closed his eyes and tears slid down his cheeks. "I'm taking you out of here, my special boy. We'll be going to a place where you won't have to worry about Davino and Carlton, or even those hunters mocking your slow development." She clawed up the books, and maintaining a firm grip on his hand, she led him out of the room. He breathed relief, because finally he was going to have dinner. Finally he would be free, and she would be taking them away from Rage Avenue to Manchester, closer to his godfather. But to his horror, as his mom pulled him down the passageway, past Colleen's room where his sister was locked away sobbing, and in the opposite direction of his mom's bedroom and the dining room, towards another back room, which was about the size of his bedroom, and the only one he had never entered before, she said in a hoarse whisper, "Shut up, you little criminal. It's your turn to be buried alive." Chapter 15. One Way Out. Jamai's mom unlocked the door made of hardwood and pushed it inward on squeaky hinges. Then she reached a hand in and up against the wall, and there came dull light. She then pushed him aggressively into the room, which was warm, gray, and empty, except for a scanty traffic of ants crawling, or rather, meandering in many directions, and a metal chair in one corner, leaned upside down against the walls. The square space was also musty, for there was no window, just a rear door, which appeared to be locked and bolted with a rusty padlock. He turned nervously facing her. She said nothing, but her beautiful face was now a display of careless determination. Also, she still held the front door, which, oddly, had no knob or handle on the inside of it. Noticing this, his heart hastened to catch his breath. Then, spitefully, almost joyfully, she said, "I bet you won't be able to attempt burning this room. If you even try to escape, you'll die." His breath stopped, and by now, he was shaking uncontrollably. Then, sniffling sporadically, he pleaded, "No, no, Mom. Please, don't leave me here. Please, Mom." Warm tears rolled down his cheeks. She pushed the door close and yelled, "No, no mercy. You're in here, not just because you're rude, but because you're careless, malicious, and very dangerous." She shook her braided head, still scowling. "Here, read these." She then chucked the books onto his chest. He gripped them with both hands and found himself staggering backwards. "Let them change you. Let them save you. And you better keep the light on, for your safety. Also, if you need to pee or poop, hammer this door one time, otherwise don't. For if you scream or act crazy, rusty chains will be on you. Am I clear?" He stared into her cold, brown eyes and nodded reluctantly. And surveying the room again, he sneezed twice and gritted his teeth. His head was hurting excruciatingly now. Yet, she only sighed heavily and raised her chin, glaring down her petite nose at him. She just wasn't the mother he knew so well and loved so much anymore. She wasn't just a monster of a mother either. She was by far more like an evil stranger in the house. His eyes glossy and bulging, he watched her quickly pull the door open, slid through and pulled it close again. Then he heard it lock from the outside. And of course, he immediately dropped the books and began hammering the door, calling and bawling, expecting her to turn back and spend a few more minutes scolding him. At least that would be better than being in here alone. But his mom didn't answer, and he heard no other sounds except her scrunching footsteps receding down the passageway. Dizzy with fury and fear, he clawed up the books and lifted them above his head to cast them back down onto the floor. The same way Moses had held the 2 stone tablets containing the 10 commandments of God just before he shattered them, as depicted in an illustration in the Bible now gripped in his right hand. But somehow, slowly and quietly, Jamai became restrained. And so he gently placed the 2 pieces of precious literature on the dusty floor, one beside the other. Then he prayed silently. No doubt, he had almost committed a forbidden act. He then did a sweeping search for cockroaches. But he found none. Not even a. No, actually, there was one now scurrying across the gray floor, passing about a couple feet from his unwashed toes. But then, in a spooky way, the insect turned and froze facing him, just like one of those in his room had done earlier. And yet this one looked quite real. Nonetheless, it was just as problematic as the ones he had suspected to be Shadow Dawn's AI spies. Refusing to do the insect any harm, he watched it scurry away and disappear behind the chair in the far corner, as if trying to preserve the one thing it had left, its pathetic little life. After all, it was as trapped as he was, as well as any other of its kind that might have been hiding in the scarce shadow of the chair. For there seemed to be no way out of this room. And so Jamai sat beside the books on the cool floor and crossed his hands over his knees, rocking back and forth. And he stared at the books his godfather sent him. They might actually become his only means of escape out of this godforsaken place before his mom and Colleen leave for Manchester tonight. For Jamai was certain he was no longer just simply grounded because of his bad behavior. Rather, he was deliberately left alone inside this back room to die slowly, just like that insect he had buried alive in the backyard a few hours ago. The end of part 1.